Yeah, and thanks. I had to keep on testing. We're going to go through the computer speaker. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that.
Excellent.
Good evening, all. This is Selena. Just a reminder that while the live streaming hasn't started yet, the meeting is recording live on YouTube from about the time that you all check in. So just to let you know.
Thank you for the warning.
That's probably useful, isn't it?
You're welcome.
Marcy, I'm assuming I'm still waiting.
You are Mayor Martin. She will be back and let you know as soon as she returns.
And I'm back. The meeting's ready to go.
All right, thank you. Sure. Okay. We don't have a mayor's message tonight, but I'm probably gonna look for Stuart. Stuart's wanting to just make a comment about the Wanda Fuca West Shore Park and Rec. So maybe what we'll do is I'll add that to the agenda, just as a under mayor's message maybe, and then I'll just allow him to speak to that. All right, so I'd like to call to order the June 29th, 2020 special meeting at 6:32 p.m. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional, that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. A quick roll call, so if everybody could please unmute. Councillor, if you could let me know you're here.
You're breaking up a little bit to me, but I think you're talking about me, so yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I'm going to stop for a moment then. Are other people having a hard time hearing me? Am I in and out, or is that Michael's connection?
No, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, all right. Not sure, Michael. Maybe it's on your end. If it is on my end, if more than one person can let me know, because what I'll do is log off and log back in. So excuse me. So I'm doing roll call. Councillor Baxter.
Yes, here.
Councillor Day.
Here.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Present.
Councillor Parkinson.
Present.
And Councillor Logan.
Present.
Councillor is not able to attend this evening. His son is at Royal Bay High School, and they're doing graduation photos. So I think that's a cool thing to celebrate. So I'm glad he's off doing that this evening. Moving to approval of the agenda, 2.1. There's several amendments we will need to make for the agenda. So I am going to just the recommendation and then look for a mover and seconder, please. So the first will be to add a brief mayor's message for Councillor Parkinson, just to comment on the Wanda Fuca and West Shore Park and Rec. In addition to that, the near-term and long-term agendas be received, and that the agenda for the special council meeting of June 29th, 2020 be adopted as amended under bylaws, adding addition to the 4 sewer bylaws. So there will be a new 5.2, which will be bylaw number 1827, main sewer LAS enlargement 3366 Wishart Road for adoption. 5.3, bylaw number 1828. This is west sewer LAS enlargement 3366 Wishart Road for adoption. 5.4, bylaw number 1829. This is the main sewer LAS enlargement for 2441 Souk Road, first, second, and third readings. 5.5, bylaw number 1830, Central LAS enlargement, 2441 Road, first, second, and third readings. And that will mean that the present 5.2 will move to 5.6, and the present 5.3 will move to 5.7. With those amendments, may I have a mover and seconder, please?
So moved.
You moved by Councillor Parkin, moved by Councillor Kobayashi. I'm going to clear hands. Any in opposition? Seeing none. Oh, sorry, I do have a hand up.
Sorry,
Councillor
just
Day?
quick question on the agenda. There are no minutes. Is that because it's a special meeting or?
I believe it is, but I will go to staff to ensure.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Yes, at a special meeting of council, we don't typically present the meetings. If time affords, we certainly would, but with the turnaround on this one, we just didn't have that kind of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Logan, I have lost you. Are you there? Councillor Logan? We may have lost Councillor Logan for a moment, so I'm going to assume he's going to come back. So I did have a mover and seconder, which was, I believe, Parkinson, Councillor Parkinson and Councillor Kobayashi. So I'll call the vote. Any in opposition? Seeing none, the motion passes. Moving on to 3, public participation. There were 2 written submissions were received and have been attached to the agenda. As well, we do have 1 person registered to speak from the Royal Bay Community Association. I'm not sure the person who will be speaking to us tonight, but I will look to staff to let them in the room. Councillor Day, did you have a comment first?
Just quickly, just wanting to know where it would fit. I received an email from a resident who requested that I ask a couple of questions on their behalf. Would you like me to include those at public participation, or would you prefer that I add it to my comments on the agenda item?
Is it in regards to an agenda item that's on the agenda this evening?
Yes, it is, but it also relates to policies within our OCP. So it does fit with an agenda item, but it also fits with our OCP for everyone.
Okay, so are you looking for discussion on that? I would prefer to do it during the actual thing that it's being commented on versus opening it up in public participation, because normally we wouldn't public participation.
All right.
Okay, thank you. So I will look to staff. Ms. Williams, was there somebody in public participation?
My apologies, Mayor Martin, there is, Marcy is introducing the person as we speak.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi there, you've reached the City of Code public participation. If you would give your name and address the council, please.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Granger. I live at 372 Kestrel Street. Just want to make sure that you can hear me.
Yes, yeah, we can all hear you, and the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Sorry, the cellular coverage is horrible out here, so if I cut out, please let me know, hopefully.
I will.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Royal Bay Community Association in support of first and second reading of bylaw number 1700-03, the Latoria South Sub-Area Plan, and bylaw number 1825, again, regarding Latoria South. We are a relatively new and rapidly growing organization that has reached 71 members in just 2 weeks. We seek to advocate for the timely transformation of our neighborhood into a sustainable and vibrant community for generations to come. We support the change, fluidity, and flexibility of the 2018 official community plan. And our goal is to be a constructive voice within the community and be part of productive conversations with council and developers. We aim to be inclusive and welcome homeowners, businesses, and renters alike. A community is not built without each of these, we believe. On to the topic at hand tonight. Colwood, despite massive tracts of oceanfront space, lacks a central hub in any such location, and as a result, cannot yet claim to be a seaside destination. Understandably, Royal Bay is the ideal location for such an opportunity. As a former gravel quarry, it is currently undergoing immense transformation into an area that has families with young children or teenagers or both, working professionals, retired community members, and more, all of whom are coming together to form a new community within Colwood. Many of us are eagerly anticipating the opening of Meadow Green Park and the playground it will offer, as well as the trail system that is under development as we await further development in Latoria South. The reason many bought or chose to live in Royal Bay comes back to the vision of what's to come and what it is already becoming, a vibrant place to live and hopefully also one day work. The projects proposed in the Latoria South Commons area support that vision and the one described in the Royal Bay Area Plan. They will uplift the local economy by providing employment and commercial opportunities, as well as support the day-to-day needs of local residents who have long awaited a grocery store closer to home. Additionally, it will support the expansion of the city's tax base, something most I think would agree is significant for the city. A transit exchange, integrated cycling paths and sidewalks that will accommodate the safety of both pedestrians and cyclists, an elementary school, sports fields, and 17 acres of parks and trails that include viewpoints are just some of the pieces we are excited about. We also appreciate, by the way, the lowering of speed limits. Within our association, many of us are eager for the long-awaited amenities that will enrich our neighborhood. While many things are in flux in the current times, the demand for a grocery store is not. More shopping overall, an opportunity for a coffee shop, daycares, and hopefully in better times, a restaurant and or pub. Moving forward to retail businesses and more social spaces in our neighborhood will just further the viability of staying closer to home. This is a long-term project that is critical to Colwood. This is our future, and it is our hope that you see that too. We certainly believe in the vision, but we also recognize that getting developments like this to have shovels in the ground is a marathon. It's time to really get going. Much of the work has already been done, and we recognize and thank city staff and council for their hard work and reflection. It is now time to take the public conversation to the next stage. We look forward to the presentation this evening and for the eventual public hearing. We hope to bring additional comments forward at that time and continue to be part of building Colwood's bright future as a Seaside community together. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Granger. Appreciate that. I do not believe we have anyone else. I'm just confirming with staff.
That is correct, Mayor Martin.
Great, thank you. So we will move on to Mayor's message, and I'm going to give the floor quickly to Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just thought I should update everybody. You'll recall that I was asked to sit as a Colwood representative on the West Shore Parks and Recreation Board. Recently had our inaugural meeting. Kiera Kahakawula from District of Metchosin was asked to chair. Damian Kowalowicz was asked to be the vice chair, and I was asked to chair the finance committee. The rec center, as you can imagine, has been hit pretty hard by this COVID crisis. I believe initially they believed that there was some government help due to wage subsidies, but it turned out that because they were owned by the municipalities, that wasn't the case. They've scrambled, adjusted their budget to come in at within the allocations from all the 5 municipalities. But doing so has meant cutting back some programs, notably some of the free park programs, probably a closure of the arena and a closure of the pool till the end of the fiscal year. Not a happy situation, but that's probably reality. The closure of the Wanda Fuca Arena has been very much complicated by the age of the facility and the fact that the electrical works under the arena slab that prevent frost forming and frost heaving, destroying the arena floor, seems to be basically beyond its useful life. So some tough decisions to be made there. And I'll just try to keep the council informed as we make those decisions.
That's great. That's great information. Thank you. And I think that's great for the public to also be aware. Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. We are going to move on now to new business 4.1. This is Selena Williams, Director of Corporate Services, in regards to Ministerial Order M192, in-person participation at council meetings. The floor is yours, Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. The report that's provided in the attached agenda introduces Ministerial Order M192. This was issued on June the 17th to replace Ministerial Order 139. So the previous ministerial order provided for council to give 3 readings and adoption of a bylaw in the same meeting, and also provided for meetings without in-person participation. The new order has 2 key changes that I wanted council to turn their mind to tonight. And one of the changes is that only bylaws related to financial matters can now receive adoption in the same meeting at which they receive third. And that's irrespective of bylaws that the legislation may have provided for a different avenue, such as OCP and zoning. So this change recognizes that the number and the scope of time-sensitive, emergency-focused decisions needed has diminished as governments have moved into transition, but it still provides targeted flexibility for certain municipal financial bylaws. And just to give council the assurance that we have adjusted our internal practices to reflect this change. The second change, which is the subject of this report, is the requirement for council to adopt a resolution that provides the rationale for the continued need to meet without the public present. Staff have conducted a review of the practices implemented since March, and those were brought in to continue the business of the city and to continue to incorporate public participation in those meetings. That rationale is provided in the report and provides the basis for the recommendation on page 1 for council's consideration. So I will leave it there, and certainly if council has any questions, I'm here to answer those.
Great, thank you. What I will do is I will look for a mover and seconder of the motion that is been recommended, or if there's a different one, and then I'll go to discussion. Thank you. I have Councillor Kobayashi has moved it. Councillor Logan has seconded it. I'm going to clear hands discussion. Seeing no discussion, I will call the question. All those in opposition? No one is in opposition. That motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to 5, bylaws. 5.1. This is Dennis Carlson, planner for Royal Base Latoria South. As well, in addition to Mr. Carlson, we have Mr. Molnar. We have Lance, excuse me, is it Floor? Floor, I hope, from Gablecraft, Ben Mycroft from Gablecraft, Dan Hyun from Urban Systems, and Matt Pike from On Point, all available. For those watching online or at home, you may see that it looks like it's Brent Molnar speaking, but it's going to actually be Dennis Carlson. So I will look to Dennis.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. And can you see the screen?
We can. Okay,
great. So this is a presentation tonight regarding the bylaws that are on Council's agenda for consideration. It starts with, and I will be providing an overview of the amendment to the official community plan. Also, amendment to the Royal Bay Plan, which forms part of the official community plan. An explanation of the Latoria South Sub-Area Plan and design guidelines, and then finally the comprehensive development zone that is being proposed. So in terms of the amendments to the official community plan, as you can see on the screen that's in front of you, the image on the left is the current OCP designation for Latoria South. And what is being proposed is on the right side of the screen. The major difference is the expansion of the area noted as Seaside Village. And it's primarily to include on the right-hand side, the shaded area, which is referred to as the transition area, which is intended to be a transition between the more intensive development in the commons and the less intensive development proposed for the quarry. So the Seaside Village, as shown here in the official community plan, is intended to be, together with the landing on Royal Beach, a primary residential and commercial center for Colwood. In terms of the Seaside Village designations, there's also some proposed changes being proposed in the bylaw. The current Seaside Village policies includes a floor area ratio of 1.75 to 3.5. working with the applicant, staff to determine that this would allow a range of approximately 1,140 dwellings to a maximum of 2,400 dwellings. It's important to note that this is compared to the 850 to 1,400 dwellings that are actually being proposed as part of this development concept. In addition, regarding the Seaside Village policies, there are proposed developments within Latoria South that will have a lower density than the 1.75 that's currently included in the FAR range. This is mostly related to the proposed retail center and to townhouses within the commons. The amendment to the bylaw will delete the 1.7 FAR, floor area ratio, but still retain the maximum floor area ratio of 3.5. Moving on to the Quarry, it's essentially the same area with the major difference being the transition area, as I mentioned earlier, and also the school site, the road layout. Those have changed somewhat in response to the proposed development. One thing to note here is that currently there is a hillside designation that is adjacent, more or less parallel to Latoria Creek Park. The hillside designation of the OCP is basically meant to apply to greenfield sites where there are steep slopes in order to ensure that as these sites are developed, they're done sensitively. This area in the Quarry was heavily disturbed during previous mining operations. And for that reason, the OCP bylaw amendment recommends that the hillside designation be removed from this site. I should clarify that that area would still be subject to the neighborhood designation, which does talk about being sensitive development in terms of removal of trees. So there would still be some ability to manage that. It also the Quarry would remain with a neighborhood designation, and that current designation allows a range of single family duplexes and townhouses with a height up to 3 stories, I should say, and a floor area ratio of up to 1.2. So turning to the proposed sub-area plan, the current Royal Bay plan identifies that there was a need for sub-area plans in order to bring areas of Royal Bay into alignment with the broader objectives in the official community plan. So the Royal Bay, I should say the Latoria South plan that's being proposed will include policies and design guidelines that are specific to Latoria South. I should point out those policies will, as council directed, also have policies regarding noise attenuation. The current policies in the Royal Bay plan will continue to apply to the remaining areas in Royal Bay, for example, Latoria North. In terms of the design guidelines, these will have been designed to specifically apply to the area of the commons. They are specific design guidelines to replace the more general design guidelines that are in the official community plan. And the major reason for this is using these design guidelines as one of the tools to realize the development concept that has been proposed for Latoria South. In respect to the Quarry, the current neighborhood design guidelines and official community plan will continue to apply. So in respect to the comprehensive development zone, the proposal, as you can see on the image in front of you, is to create essentially 10 sub-areas within that CD28 zone. And again, this is one more tool together with the design guidelines to, as much as possible, ensure that the development concept that's been proposed by Gablecraft is actually realized over time. I should point out at the outset that the zoning does contain a regulation that limits the maximum number of dwelling units within Latoria South to 2,100. Before I continue on, and Your Worship, you may want to deal with this at the appropriate part of the agenda. There are two corrections to the zoning bylaw that will need to be considered by council should you decide to move this to first and second reading. The first is that there's a drafting error in section 1033(2)(3) of the zoning bylaw that refers to eating and drinking establishment, including drive-through. It needs to be changed to say excluding drive-through. The other provision is in 1033(2)(2), which refers to the requirements regarding subdivision. Essentially, the wording as it's currently drafted in the bylaw has an inadvertent effect of requiring that upon the first subdivision, the developer would have to create all 10 sub areas. In the opinion of staff, this is somewhat onerous and somewhat unnecessary. What we're suggesting is a process very much like we're using with Latoria North, and which is that as each area comes on stream at the choosing of the developer, at that time they would then create the area boundary. But the wording that staff have presented as an alternative wording is simply to address that change. So moving on with the actual zoning bylaw itself, area 1, which you can see at the top of the screen, is the intent here is that this is a core commercial site for Royal Bay, South Colwood, and neighboring communities. Gablecraft has provided a letter which is attached to your report. It indicates their intent is to develop this site prior to any residential development in Latoria South. This area 1 is I guess best identified as the shopping center site. It will include a range of retail and commercial uses in addition to a grocery store. The floor area ratio in the zone will range from 1.2 to 2, and the height in that zone will range from 2 to 4 stories. Moving down to area 2, the boundaries of area 1 and area 2 are important in that they frame the commons, which is really going to be the main street. If you recall, when we brought the road standards report to committee, I believe it was, we talked about the importance of that street as being the place that potentially could be closed off for events. It's really meant to be the sort of the hub of that commercial area. Farther down within area 2, there could be a mix of apartments, commercial, residential uses. Again, the floor area ratio ranges from 1.0 to 3.0. The height for buildings fronting the common would be a maximum of 4 stories, and then throughout the rest of the site would be a maximum of 6 stories. Moving on to area 3, this is we refer to as a gateway site because of its prominence at the intersection of Latoria and Machosen Road. The zoning here would permit a mix of apartments and commercial residential. It also should be noted that the zoning for this development area would permit a 12-story building.
Dennis, your slides aren't progressing at the same rate you are.
Yeah, I was about to.
Yeah, pardon me, you're right.
I was to say the same thing. So there you go.
My fault. That's I'm being the scribe scroller here. My apologies.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So the the floor area ratio for this area would range between 3 to 3.5, and again the height would range from 4 to 12 stories. The 12 stories being the signature building that I referenced. Moving on down Machosen to area 4. The intent here is the zoning starts to change away from residential and more to employment related uses. This is area 4 is also the site of where there's provision in the zoning for a major health facility should that be successful. The zoning again with the floor area ratio would range from 2.5, although I see on the screen it says 3, 2.5 to about 3.5, and a maximum height of 6 stories. Continuing down Machosen Road to area 5. Again, this area is really focused on uses that are categorized as employment and institutional uses. Maximum floor area ratio of 2.0, maximum height of 4 stories. Continuing down to area 6, this is Machosen Road and what will be the extension of Ryder, which will extend right through the entire site. Again, the focus here is uses that are really more employment uses. I should note that this is also a site where the zoning would permit a service station. The floor area ratio has a maximum of 1.0 and also a maximum height of 4 stories. Moving on to area 7. Again, this is another one of the gateway sites because of its proximity to Latoria and the extension of Ryder, and it's a major entrance to the commons. This is also included in the transition area that I mentioned earlier between the commons and the quarry. Zoning, the permitted uses here would range from apartments to commercial residential to public buildings, whatever that opportunity may arise. Floor area ratio, again, range of 1 to 3 and a height maximum 4 stories. So moving down to area 8, which again is another one of the transition areas that I mentioned earlier. This is where there could be a range of apartments, townhouses, and commercial residential. Floor area ratio again is about 1 to 3 with a maximum of 4 stories. Area 9 is also part of the transition area that I mentioned. Here, there's a possibility or included in the zoning are a range of uses that are more employment focused, such as institutional, museum, scientific research. So we're hoping that there may be an opportunity for something there that would be really unique and special to the commons and really support the whole intent of what we're trying to achieve here. Again, the floor area ratio ranges from 1 to 2 and the height is a maximum of 4 stories. Area 10 is the area that essentially applies to the Quarry neighborhood. It continues on much as Latoria North, permitting a range of single family and townhouses. It's also the potential site of the elementary school and the fire hall, both of which are contemplated in the zoning, and a height of 2 to 3 stories. The last slide, I believe, is the staff recommendation. There are a number of recommendations for council consideration in regards to the amendments to the official community plan as I've described, and also the comprehensive development zone. There are also considerations that council must undertake as required under the Local Government Act. For council's information, if council chooses to give first and second readings tonight, the public hearing at this point is scheduled for July 13th. That concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you, Council, or excuse me, I was going to call you a counselor there, Mr. Carlson. So what I'd like to do, Council, is we have 7 recommendations and we're going to need to go individually. Unfortunately, I need a mover and seconder for each individual, but I'm going to offer 2 opportunities for council to speak this evening. One will be now, that if you wish to ask questions before we have any motions on, you can. And then I will also do discussion on every recommendation. So I will go first to Councillor Parkinson, then Day. And can we actually, just before Councillor Parkinson, could we actually remove the staff recommendation so we can see each other? Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few general comments. Firstly, if I could ask, for Area 6, the service station, presumably that would be subject to similar design guidelines to the rest of the site, that it couldn't just be a tacky old gas bar. I mean, I don't think the developers want to do that anyway, but I just want to make sure it's covered by the same kind of design guidelines as the rest of the site.
Through you, your worship, they would require a development permit.
Okay, I'm going to consider that a yes. And then I missed there was 2 amendments. One was to exclude drive-throughs. I caught that. And can I get an update on what the second amendment was?
So the second one was there's this section in the current draft zone, section 103322. And it's basically the intent, as it's currently worded, is that upon the time of the first subdivision, the developer would have to create all 10 sub areas. That is an onerous requirement, and the staff's opinion is not necessary. What we're really trying to achieve here is much the same process that we use for Latoria North, which is that as parcels are created, the subdivision only applies to that one area, not to the whole entire area. So the wording that staff are recommending to replace the current wording is in order to achieve that objective.
Thank you very much. Okay, then just some general comments. Firstly, a good job on staff and I guess the development and their consultants to bring this forward. It seems, you know, as we've gone through the process with Royal Bay, it just seems to me to be glacially slow and itty bitty things and a lot of steps. But in fact, I think when we get here, you can see how it's all been pulled together into one coherent package. So attaboys all around and attagirls all around for that one. Just general comments. First, a little disappointed that there's no language sort of encouraging non-market housing on this site. And I recognize that there's nothing stopping it or preventing it, but just perhaps as a policy thing, I think we've seen enough to know that Colwood is well served with non-market housing. We've certainly stepped up to the plate on that, but we're very much concentrating too much in Colwood Corners. And as the community grows and there's a need for more non-market housing, obviously this would be a very suitable site for it. So again, I know that there's certainly nothing standing in the way of that happening, but I guess I would have liked to see a sort of encouragement type of statement. And then the second one, and this is a general pet peeve of mine, in a couple of places, it talks about, well, here's the rules, but they could be changed maybe if we'd like, you know, when it talks about on page 87 that, you know, these are the unit counts, but, you know, maybe if the traffic studies came along, they could be increased. Well, lots of things could happen in the future. And again, when they talks about all the area, I think 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, it always gives a FAR and then says, well, we got the potential to increase the FAR if it meets other city objectives. And frankly, I guess any site in the city has the potential to change or increase or adjust its zoning if they want to come to council and say so. It'll be no different here. So it just, to me, it seems like dangling a carrot with no good reason. So I'm not sure if anybody else is on that hobby horse or not, but essentially, I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing in front of me here, and will support the motions.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So this is the time where I'm going to bring up some correspondence that I received from a longtime community member who asked me to ask these questions. As you know, in our official community plan, one of the goals was to apply a conservation design approach. But I'm not seeing any information at all coming forward about that. So the questions that this person asked me to ask was, has any consideration been given to the animals that live here? And will any trees be left, as in not cut down and replaced, for the many eagles that nest in those trees and perch there to hunt? And whether or not there will be any animals left for them to hunt, given the type of development that's moving ahead here. So maybe I could just pause and ask staff to answer those.
Through your worship, the The Quarry neighborhood designation in the current official community plan does require that site adaptive planning principles be applied. So those would be applied to any of the areas up against Latoria Creek Park where there currently is some stands of trees. And so staff would be mindful of making sure that there's retention of habitat in those areas.
Okay, so that leaves me with some concern because I have never seen any documentation of what species are here or what habitat they require. And the reason I point this out is this person who contacted me really got me thinking about that. Recently, we were in the news with our wonderful Sandra having designed the signs to stay at least an eagle apart, etc. You know, we all really value the natural habitat that's all around us, but I'm concerned that we don't know very much about it. And by not knowing much about it, we're not really protecting that habitat that we take for granted will always be here. So I just, I'm a little concerned that we, you know, if you watch a nature program about Yellowstone Park, you'll hear about their keystone species, which had to be replaced after they were gone in order for the park to survive. And that was the wolves. And I don't know what our keystone species is. I came across something trying to figure that out, and it may be one of the many owl species that live here as the apex predator for our area, but I'm not seeing any information coming forward to support that OCP goal of applying a conservation design approach. I'm also concerned because I haven't seen any changes to the plan to reflect consideration of the massing to avoid the wind tunnel and provide noise abatement for Latoria Road. Can maybe staff could give us more information on how that is being handled?
So through your worship, there's in regards to the wind considerations, which were directed by council at the May 11th meeting, the staff report on page, I think it's on your agenda, it's page 47, does reference the provisions that will be included in the design guidelines regarding noise attenuation. There's also an additional policy in the sub-area plan around noise attenuation. So we believe that we've addressed that issue.
I'm looking, my page 47 is signatures.
So it's under section 2.2.1, Latoria South sub-area plan in the staff report.
Page 47 of Brent speaking, page 47 of the entire package.
Sorry, sorry, our numbering's different. What section is it again? And I can find the page number for us.
It's 2.2.1 of the staff report.
Of the staff report, okay.
Page 43.
It is page 40. Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Page 43, Councillor Day.
Thank you. So I did note that it talks about the FAR. It talks about the number of units per hectare. And the only thing it says is orient buildings parallel to the street with breaks between the buildings. And to use the form and facade articulation, including the balconies, to deflect the noise. I'm just wondering, where did staff come up with those plans for noise and wind tunnel effects? Because I don't know if that works or how we know that it will work.
So through you, your worship, these are design guidelines that are intended to inform the applicant when they apply for a particular site. As part of the development permit process, we would at that point require them to illustrate, perhaps with further studies, how they have addressed these policies regarding noise and wind. So those would not be detailed until a development permit, because it really is largely predicated on the type and the form of the development that's being proposed.
Okay, thank you. So the and I hope council will indulge me a little bit because this is perhaps going to seem a little bit like a rant, but this site has been operating for 100 years as a gravel pit. But I think we need to stop referring to the way it is today as having been like that for 100 years, because it most definitely has not been. The mining permit was granted in 1992. That's when the hole was blasted into the quarry area. So many of the changes that have occurred on the topography have happened in the fairly recent past, in the last 15 or 20 years, really. And so I'm just concerned that we whitewash our recommendations based on, well, it's a mined out gravel pit. It had a form and a character. It had animals that lived there, and just because it has been mined doesn't mean that it has nothing of value there anymore. So I'm just very concerned when I read the report, and we're removing the hillside designation for the portion of the land adjacent to the park. And we're not, I don't see any requirement being made to ensure that what is left there is sensitive to the environment. And when we go back to our OCP talking about trying to have site adaptive design standards and to apply this conservation design approach, but we have no understanding of the species or the habitat that they require in order to continue to exist there, I'm very concerned that we have really dropped the ball on retaining the things that we are in fact taking for granted. It's a beautiful area. It's still very beautiful. And in spite of everything that it's been through, there are many species that live there. And I don't think that we have given adequate consideration to creating an environment in which wildlife can remain. So I'll leave it at that, and I will come back when we get to each recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter. Councillor Baxter? Councillor Baxter, unmute.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just puzzled by all of the lists of uses and the fact that bakeries are the only thing that are limited in size. And I can understand why you wouldn't want a big industrial bakery to be built there. But on the other hand, you wouldn't want a big industrial brew house either. So I wonder if staff could explain why, if we need a limit on bakery size, we don't need a limit on some of the others.
Through your worship, the 200-meter limit for bakeries is a limit that's used in other zones in the land use bylaws. So we've simply translated that over. As Councillor Baxter correctly points out, it really is to ensure that these are more community-focused bakeries and not large-scale industrial types. In terms of the distilleries, that is something that staff did investigate on a fairly extensive basis. That is a bit challenging in terms of limiting distilleries because other communities have limited by tank size. And in the staff's opinion, that is something that would be very difficult to monitor. So we have chosen not to put any limits on distilleries.
Okay, that was meant to be a general question about all of them, but I have some confidence that the developer doesn't want to have anything that's too large of any one particular uses, as well as the city and the developer is, after all, got the land and won't sell it to anybody who's seems to be intent on doing something that won't fit. So I understand why the bakery ended up the way it is, and I guess I would just ask staff, do you feel that there's any danger that one of these uses might be built to a size that would change the nature of the town center there?
Through you, Your Worship, we actually on this one, we did have some discussions with the developer Gablecraft regarding including distilleries and breweries. And for that reason, we've limited to the areas that I described along the chosen road, particularly to ensure as much as possible that there's minimal conflict between a distillery use and any adjacent residential use. We do think that with a lot of the microbreweries and the distilleries that you find throughout the Victoria region, that something of that size would certainly be appropriate here.
Okay, having asked those questions, I'd like to congratulate everybody involved on the, I guess what you might call a little bubble diagram there that's going into the plan with your areas 1 through 9. I've never seen planning done in exactly that way, and I think it's an excellent way of controlling what gets built in any particular area without being too restrictive. And I understand that the markets are changing. COVID's changing a lot of things. The world is changing, and developers will always have to come back sometimes and do a bit of adjustment. But I think you've got a system there that I would commend to be used on Royal Bay Beach as well. And overall, I'm extremely pleased with this bylaw, and we'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi. Oh, Councillor Kobayashi, on mute.
Sorry, I'm pulling a Michael.
Yeah, that's right.
Just want to thank you, Your Worship. Just some comments here. A lot of the concerns I had before are certainly have diminished considerably. I think that there's been a reasonable reduction in the FAR. We've limited the number of housing, so we got lower density. I think that what the developer's doing by actually it's a gamble on his part, developing the commercial site, which is not a step that I thought would happen first. I thought the development would have to come first for the commercial site. And I think just from what I've seen in the latest drawings, the preservation of the view corridor is all admirable. And my other big concern was the noise attenuation. And as staff has said, I think that will be covered in detail later on. I guess, so I will be supporting this myself. The only thing that I just was hoping to get some clarification from Councillor Day. I don't really understand this, what you're talking about on the conservation side. Because, you know, to me, I live beside this like gravel pit right now. And it's a blight to me. It just creates dirt where I am right now. You know, at one time, this whole area, even where I live, I guess my house, it sits on, back in the 50s and 60s when I lived here, it was all forest. And so I'm not too sure. I mean, if we're following our bylaws, to me, I think, you know, we're addressing what your concerns are. So I'm not absolutely too sure of what you're talking about. Like, what are we not conserving? I do need clarification on that. But other than that, my comments are that I think it's, from what I see right now, I like where this is going, and I will be supporting the motion.
Great, thank you. What I'm going to do is move on to recommendation number 1, which is that the June 19th, 2020 staff report titled Royal Bay Latoria South be received. May I have a mover and seconder for that? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, second by Councillor Logan. Is there any discussion on this motion? I'm just waiting. Councillor Parkinson. And Day.
Your worship, should it be received with amendments?
I will look to staff, but there's 7 motions that we're going through, so we're going to be receiving them and amending as we work through them.
That is correct, Mayor Martin. This is just simply to receive the report. Once you get to first reading of the land use bylaw, the amendments will be incorporated into that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Day.
Thank you. Just a clarification to help Councillor Kobayashi in understanding what I was getting at. Our OCP requires that we apply a conservation design approach. So I would have anticipated that if we were following the OCP, we would have had some sort of mention of what lives there and what they need to survive, basically. Yes, we all live in areas that were once much wilder, and there are still animals that survive here. The rabbits are doing very well in my backyard, but and the owls are eating them. But I don't know what will tip those scales. There's just a lot that I don't understand about the environment that we love and that we live in. And yet, the more we develop, the more we need to understand what impacts them. So I was hoping that we would get some information about what we need to protect. And that is the same thing I brought up about the ocean, about the eelgrass beds, whether it's the otters that are denning in the sandy cliffs, or the eagles that are nesting in the trees and fighting regularly with the ravens in my backyard, or we just need to identify some minimum level so that they will still be here when this is built out. Thank you, that's it.
Thank you for your explanation. So we are on receiving the report. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Oh, no, wait, there is a question. Councillor Baxter. Oh, no, unmute Councillor Baxter.
Sorry, I got out of order there. I was getting ahead of myself. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So all those in opposition? Seeing none, that motion passes. Moving on to recommendation number 2, the bylaw number 1700.03, cited as City of Colwood Official Community Plan Amendment bylaw number 17-03 2020, Latoria South Sub-Area Plan, be given first reading. May I have a mover and seconder, please? It's moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. I will clear that. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Sorry, hold on. Councillor Day, then Parkinson.
Thank you. Just that I will not be supporting this because I don't feel that we are currently following our official community plan.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Again, I'm just wondering about the amendments. Were we supposed to put them in at first reading here?
No,
out of
we're
the
still working our way through.
Okay, I'm going to leave it to somebody else then.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to clear people's hands. Those in opposition, please. Councillor Day opposes. And I'm just waiting to ensure no one else. Seeing none, that motion passes. Moving on to recommendation number 3, that council consider the official community plan amendment bylaw number 17-03 Latoria South in conjunction with the city's current financial plan and applicable waste management plans. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Discussion. Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to recommendation number 4, that bylaw number 17.03, cited as City of Colwood Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 17-03 2020, Latoria South Sub-Area Plan, be given second reading. I'm looking for a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. I'm clearing hands. Councillor Day, discussion.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Day, did you wish to
Sorry,
discuss?
I'm just ahead of you voting in opposition.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I will wait for discussion just to ensure nobody else.
Mayor Martin,
Yes.
this is the motion that needs a minor amendment. Please, I'll hand it over to Dennis Carlson to answer.
No, I have recommendation 5 has the amendments. Are you sure?
The amendment needs to, for the land use bylaw needs to be considered before you give first and second readings. So you're right, it is number 5.
Yeah, so I'll get there. Trust me, everybody. I will get there, I promise. So we are on recommendation number 4. And this is regard to second reading. I've done discussion. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. And that is it. So the motion passes. Moving on to recommendation 5. This will be in 2 parts. That bylaw number 1825, cited as Colwood Land Use Bylaw number 151/1989, amendment number 174. This is Comprehensive Development Zone CD 28 Latoria South, bylaw number 1825/2020, be given first reading as amended to change the word including to excluding in section 2.33.2-3, section F, number 6 of Schedule 3, so that it reads eating and drinking establishments excluding drive-throughs, and delete section 10.33.22 of Schedule 3 in its entirety and replace it with a new section 10.33.22 as follows. No subdivision is permitted except that the lands may be subdivided from time to time into one or more parcels, so long as each such parcel represents the outer boundaries of a sub area as shown on the CD25 zone map.
28.
And the maximum density in section 10.33.2.1 is allocated to each of the parcels created by the subdivision and the remaining lands of the CD25 zone as a whole, and is further secured by terms of a covenant granted by the city under section 219 of the Land Title Act. May I have
Mayor
a mover?
Martin? Mayor
Excuse me?
Martin, if I can just make one slight correction to that, it's a CD 28 zone in both instances.
Okay, thank you. So yes, did I say something else? My apologies if I did. It is a CD 28 zone. My apologies if I read something else. So I need a mover and seconder to that. That is moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Discussion. Councillor Parks? No, I'm teasing. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to recommendation number 6. That bylaw number 1825, cited as Colwood Land Use Bylaw number 151, 1989, amendment number 174, the Comprehensive Development Zone CD 28, Latoria South, bylaw number 1825, 2020, be given, sorry, there's a bit of a, I'm assuming it's be given first and second reading.
And no, Mayor Martin, it needs to be given second reading. You've just read first as amended.
Okay, thank you. Being given as second reading. May I have a mover and seconder to that, please? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Day. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to recommendation number 7. The council affirmed that consultation carried out in relation to the official community plan amendment bylaw number 1700-03 2020 Latoria South satisfies the requirements of section 475 parenthesis 2 of the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Seeing none, that motion passes. Moving on to, now if everyone remembers, we have new bylaws, so I'm hoping everybody made notes. So this is the new 5.2, which is bylaw number 1827, main sewer LAS enlargement of 3366 Wishart Road. This is for adoption. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Day, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 5.3, bylaw number 1828, West Sewer LAS 3366 Wishart Road. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 5.4. This is bylaw number 1829, main sewer LAS enlargement 2441 Souk Road. This is for first, second, and third readings. We have a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? The motion passes. Moving on to 5.5. This is bylaw number 1830, Central Sewer LAS enlargement 2441 Souk Road, first, second, and third readings. Moved by Councillor Baxter. Second by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 5.6, bylaw number 1831, sewer LAS enlargement. This is for 534 Allendale Road. This is for first, second, and third readings. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 5.7, this is bylaw number 1832, West Sewer LAS enlargement 534 Allendale Road, first, second, and third readings. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Logan. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Motion to adjourn? Councillor Logan?
Mayor Martin?
Oh, yes. Thank you. You're right. Excuse me. Just before we, I'm sorry, we're retracting the, we are tracting the adjournment due to the fact, and we have actually, Councillor, excuse me, Ms. Williams, do you want to, why don't you go ahead and explain the issue that we have, or?
Certainly. Given that council has given first and second reading to the OCP and land use bylaws for Latoria South, the public hearing, which is scheduled for July the 13th, will now proceed on that date. That was our regularly scheduled council date. So we would like a resolution of council to reschedule the July 13th regular council meeting to Wednesday, July 15th at 6:30 p.m.
Okay. That is moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. I will clear hands. Is there any discussion in regards to that? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Now I will call on to Councillor Logan for adjournment. Councillor Logan has moved adjournment. Those in opposition, just hold on one final time. We'll clear the hands. Those in opposition? Seeing none, thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.